Hi, this is Wayne Brown, your life architect. Welcome back to my little video series that I'm making for my emailing list to explain to them the 5 steps in greater detail. So this is the second video in this series, and this is where I start to go into greater depth on top of each of the steps that I outlined in the introductory video. So today's video is going to be about the insight portion of the steps. So this is the first one. Now the insight portion of the steps actually came to me from an insight. I was talking to a chap that I'd worked with who was an Indian gentleman, and he happened to mention to me in the course of our conversations that his marriage had been arranged. His parents had picked his partner. Now that struck me as a little strange, as coming from a Western society we get to pick our partners. So I started digging into further as to why they do that, and he explained that because they're removed from the situation, they don't have an involvement in the emotions. They can look at it analytically, and that's one of the things that got me started on creating this system after 15 years of learning, and I think I worked out at 6,500 hours I've put in reading books, watching DVDs, going to courses, doing workbooks, all of these different things to learn all of these things that have enabled me to find my soulmate and now help others. So the insight portion of it is learning the things that are tripping us up in relationships, the things that keep creating the failures. I know for myself I had recurring problems, recurring challenges, recurring behaviours that I brought to the relationship and also my partners, which caused those relationships to implode. Now once I found out what they were, it became easier to move from my past to my future. So the insight portion of it is we have some things, one of which is called a self-sabotaging pattern. Now self-sabotaging patterns are these things where we say we want something, but when we start to get close, something in our subconscious sabotages it and we don't get it. An example of this, and one which a lot of people understand, is a lot of people say they want to be wealthy. A lot of people say they want to be rich, but very few have it. And the reason for that is these self-sabotaging patterns. That's one of the things. So they start to save money, they get to a certain amount, and then they lose it all. So if you have a belief, for example, that shares are risky and that you shouldn't do them because it's too easy to lose money, that belief will then set you up that when you're buying your shares, you'll invariably fail, and you'll confirm that belief. And because you have that self-sabotaging pattern that they don't work and you can't do shares or whatever it is, you will regularly fail and reinforce that belief, and you end up in this spiral that just takes you further and further down. So it's finding out these self-sabotaging patterns in a relationship, and I know for myself, one of mine was just being angry. And that was both aggressive anger and passive anger, which isn't a good thing. But once I found out where that self-sabotaging pattern came from, I was able to remove that so that now I don't do anger anywhere near like I used to. The other things you want to do is, in relationships, there's a common thread. So you will find that all of your relationships have a similar theme that runs through them all. And it's not always obvious. For me, all of my relationships seem to have this underlying anger. And I thought it was anger. It wasn't. It was something else, and it was completely about me. And regardless of how angry they were, it was my stuff that I had to learn. And once I found that common thread, it was so much easier to appreciate those relationships and prepare to be able to let them go. So it's looking for that common thread. And the other thing as well is we have this thing that a lot of people like to refer to as closure. So that means there's things that we need to ask our partners. Now there's people out there that say, well, you write a letter to them and you put all your feelings on the paper and you be honest about it and you use I statements and all this sort of thing, and then you mail it to them. Now, if they've moved on and they're suddenly confronted with that, it's not good. So the methods that I use enable you to get closure without actually involving your ex-partner at all. They don't even have to know that you're doing this, but it enables you to move forward and let them go. So for me, this was a really cool one, was being able to sit there and appreciate them for who they were and realise that they weren't a pain in my butt. They were actually some of the best things that ever happened to me. Now, the problem is a lot of these things sit in our unconscious. Now, our unconscious, and I'm presuming you've all heard of an iceberg. So there's your little iceberg. Actually, that's not too shabby. Now, as most of you will know, with an iceberg, you only see this tiny portion at the top. All of this is hidden. Now, our minds are very much the same. There is this tiny portion here that we're conscious of. These are the things that come in through our five senses: our touch, our hearing, our sight, our taste, our smell. That gives us these conscious things. A lot of this unconscious stuff is the things that we don't think about, like moving our muscles. They just move automatically. We don't have to consciously think about them. Our heartbeat, our digestive system, our beliefs that drive our actions. All of these different things happen on a completely unconscious level that we don't know about. And all of these sorts of things, like self-sabotaging patterns, sit down here in our unconscious. And these are the things where, if they're not dealt with, moving from your past is near on impossible, because these things keep you held back. If you have this common thread that keeps recurring and you haven't discovered it, you can't deal with it, and therefore it'll keep happening. That's how I went through 2 marriages. If you don't get this closure, you've always got something that holds you back in your past with that ex-partner. And if you have this self-sabotaging pattern, every relationship's going to be the same, because you're causing it to fail. Now, that doesn't mean it's all your fault, because blame is always shared. And it's always different proportions, but it's always shared. It's never one person's fault. That's the one thing I have learned. So that's the insight portion of the steps. Now, if you're coaching, there may be other things that we need to do as well, but I've found these are the 3 common things that people need to be able to learn from their past relationships to allow them to move forward. So I'm hoping this has given you some clarity about what's involved. I hope it's helped answer some questions about some things, about maybe why your relationships may have a common thread, and start you thinking about things like that. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can go to my website, waynebrown.com.au, and send me an email through there. And I can always send you some free stuff. There's a link in there actually for some free stuff if you want to read about it. But I'm hoping that helps clarify some of the thoughts and ideas and questions you may have had. Anyway, keep an eye out for the second video. This will be going into the release. This is actually letting your relationships go so that you're not held back in your past anymore. So I'll catch you on the next video, and you have a fantastic day.